In 1 John 2, 1 through 6, my little children, I am writing these things to you so that you may not sin. And if anyone sins, we have an advocate with the Father, Yeshua HaMashiach, the righteous, and he himself is the propitiation for our sins. And not for our sins only, but also for those of the whole world. And by this we know that we've come to know him if we keep his commandments. The one who says, I've come to know him and does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever keeps his word truly, in him, the love of God has been perfected. By this we know that we are in him. The one who says he abides in him ought himself to walk in the same manner as he walked. So today it's about the practical side of the faith. It's the things that unite us all. There's so many different names for us: Messianic, Hebrew roots, Church of God, Torah-observant, etc., etc., etc. But what drives us to do it is to actually walk the way the Messiah walked. It's not a difficult path. Well, it's not a difficult decision. It can be a difficult path, but if we just surrender to what the Bible says, this is pretty much the outcome. This is it. And how do we navigate that in this world today? From my skewed view of people online, I think we are the remnant. I think we are the last bastion of traditional values left in the West. If you look at the Sunday churches, they've kind of diluted down everything in a way to compromise to try to keep people around, and they fizzled out. And we're here sticking out like a sore thumb saying, no, man's a man, a woman is a woman, one man, one woman is a marriage, right? With these traditional values that are so beneficial to society, not just biblical, that it's very maddening. The world is going away from it. So I think we're it. And that's what it looks like today. Whether I'm right or not, it remains to be seen. I hope I'm wrong. But if you recall, in the Sunday churches that many of us grew up in, it was rigid. There were lines. There was behavioral lines. There was strict teachings, and it was all driving a behavior that while they kept the wrong day and they kept the wrong holidays, they were still on the right track for the most part. And today it just doesn't, I'm just not seeing that, but maybe it exists. Who knows? I could be wrong. You younger folks are in the room today, so you can hear the mess. Coming to this faith when you're young and you're having kids is a chore. And I want you all to have a better shot at this. Because for us who came to this, and some came late in life where their kids are teens and grown-ups, and then you get into this faith and your family doesn't want to talk to you anymore. They think you've lost your minds. So we want to have a better transition for the next generation, because if you have a better foundation, maybe you can do it better than us. Maybe you can go further than we did. Maybe you can have a smoother time. And that's what it's all about, is not trying to be the best, but trying to serve and trying to help other people and lift them up to do better than what this generation, what our generation has had. Today is not meant to be comprehensive. I'm going to touch on topics of marriage, being unequally yoked, and educating children in this. And I'm going to touch on the topics, and hopefully you can chime in. And if it takes off, we could do it again. We could dive into topics as time goes by. But my wife and I, we had to learn while doing, and it worked. Our kids are here, and our grandkids are being raised in this. That's a huge success story, and I want you all to experience it too. And I'm going to share our walk of how we learned while working. And Diana and I both had traditional values when we got married, except we were worldly. She was raised in Seventh-day Adventist church, so she's never had pork and she's always kept Sabbath. I was raised Roman Catholic, didn't have that experience. Okay. But we were in the world when we got married. And once we got married and had a first kid, or maybe before we had a first kid, we went, okay, it's time to grow up. It's time to go to church. And then I had to cross a divide that you could see what the outcome was of that. But the first mistake I want to share with you is pretty funny, because that was back about 2001. I was studying, and we moved into our house in Missouri from California. So we moved into where we are from. We moved from California to here, to the country here. And there was a war on Christmas going on in the country then. And we were from California, which what you're seeing worldwide today with all this woke stuff started 25 years ago in California. So we came here running away from what the whole world has turned into. And so the traditional Christianity was under the gun. They wanted it gone. They wanted Christmas gone. Remember those whole happy holidays and that? And so I was like, that does it. I planted a Colorado blue spruce at the top of my yard. It was going to be the biggest Christmas tree you've ever seen. And then I learned the truth about Christmas. Now that tree's 25 feet tall and it's never had one light hung on it. Okay. Great tree though. Beautiful. It even has a little child sitting next to it that's growing up. But we were on fire. We wanted to move out to the country to raise our kids the way we were raised. It wasn't very religious. Our motivation was more about freedom. We didn't, in California back then, probably the same today, the kids were no skating, no biking, no this, no that. You got to wear a helmet. You got putting bubble wrap on them. And we're like, nah, we want to go live where the kids can, go fish and go hunt and do whatnot. And the kids just love getting in the gullies and playing in mud and living like that. And that just seemed like it was a better option for us. And it turned out well. But the tree was a big learn while doing moment. And looking back and working our way through the faith shows me why Paul said that elders and deacons must have families. Because you can't learn this stuff in a book. You got to live it. You got to deal with how am I going to make a living while I don't break the Sabbath and provide for my family. The mom's got to figure out how she's going to get the kids an education without getting them too exposed to the world. And so those qualifications that Paul listed out are there for a reason, because that's how you are a mature man. And it says you got to be husband of one wife. It means that you've got to have a stable family in order to represent. And back in the day, maybe you think, oh no, you don't need that, because Paul didn't have family himself. But boy, do I have an appreciation of that being on the other side of it, because there's stuff that you and your spouse are going to go through that no other person on earth's ever going to know about. Only Yahweh and Yeshua are going to know about that bond and about your trials and your tribulations. And it's very, very important to have that. So, and looking in the review, I don't have any type of regret. I'm not a person that looks back, but I have tried to imagine what would have happened if we didn't do this. I cannot imagine my life any other way. We've met so many people. We've had so many different opportunities in fellowship and Sukkot and stuff, that our life is so good and blessed because we went down this path and we moved 1,500 miles away from the rest of our family. So Yahweh meant for this to happen, because we were able to isolate ourselves like Abraham, leaving his parents and coming out of idolatry. And so we were able to have that same experience. And looking back, I have no idea. It would have been friction. We probably would have had, our kids would be a mess. I have no idea. So this is good. And you youngsters, I'm telling you, this is the way to be. It's not glamorous, but boy, the peace of having a wife for 26, 27 years and having kids, and that is just so special and so biblical that there's no replacement for that. So John 17:15-21, I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but to keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, I also sent them into the world. For their sake, I sanctify myself, that they themselves also may be sanctified in truth. I do not ask on behalf of these alone, but for those who believe in me through their word, that they may all be one, even as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be in us, that the world may believe that you sent me. Many read this and believe it to be about Sunday Christianity, but I think it's us. Because Sunday Christianity looks like the world. We don't look like the world. We look different. We kind of stick out. And we're trapped in no man's land. We don't work on Shabbat. We do work on Sunday. We don't keep Christmas and Easter. We keep the holy days of the Bible. We don't eat pork. What does the world think that we are then? They think we're Muslims, right? In fact, this country thinks that it's like some kind of admission ticket price that you have to eat pork to be an American or something like that. And they don't understand that the Messiah, none of the apostles had anything to do with the foods that are prohibited by Leviticus 11. Why do I keep Leviticus 11? Because it says so. Does it make me healthier? I don't know. I weighed 270 pounds eating clean. Okay. Okay. All right. But it says what it says. And having done this for 25 years, there's just so much about the Bible that you wouldn't know if you didn't do. This is another big divide. Our country is addicted to degrees. Now, I have a lot of respect for people who have high education, and I do a lot of reading of their material, but you have to put it to work. In the Navy, when I learned electronics, we would go into the classroom and learn it by the book, and then we go to the lab and do it. Classroom, lab, then you go to the fleet and you have to do it. That's the same thing with every part of our lives. The things we know about the Bible by living the festivals is so eye-opening, right? Because you understand that the first month is in spring. So you understand what Missouri and Kansas looks like, and you know it's time, right? What does Yeshua say? That you know that the times are coming because the sky is red, right? That the seas are going to be rough. We know what time of year it is and we know what we're supposed to be doing based upon the climate and the environment we live in. We know once that corn gets tall, we need to start looking at where we're going to keep Sukkot. We know this because we live it. And there's so much of the Bible that you can't learn by just talking about it all the time. You got to actually do it. And you have to commit. This is the tough medicine thing of today. We have to commit to this and turn like you've never turned before. This has to be your lifestyle in order for it to work. Everybody is under the gun. Our family, when we tell them we keep the Sabbath, what do they say? You don't do that perfectly, right? Our employers, our friends, our neighbors, when we say we do these things, they instantly look for us to be kind of having wiggle room, because if we have wiggle room, then they can not take it seriously. And this is you have to commit also, because only Yahweh and Yeshua know your heart, right? You can do this by putting one foot in front of the other, and you can pretend to do this. It's possible, seeds on rocky soil. But if you commit and this becomes your lifestyle, then there are benefits that can't be expressed. What about our kids, though? Well, before I get on that, it's not a religion. Okay, that's something that you learn when you do this, right? Is that the other denominations are religions. They're things that you put on the shelf. You go to church on Sunday and then you go to work, or you go to church and then you go watch the football game. This isn't a religion, right? The first scripture was about walking as Yeshua walked. 3.5 years, he had a ministry where he did things, and he met people on the high days, and he met people in the synagogue, and he met people in the temple, and he met people in Capernaum, and he casted out demons with a lady that wasn't of the lineage, who knew to expect the Messiah. He was living out his teaching. So if you live it and you do it and you take this seriously and you commit, it becomes a lifestyle that I cannot possibly imagine not doing this anymore. And I remember how old my kids were based upon where we kept Sukkot, based upon what dances we were doing at the fellowship. This is a complete lifestyle, and it's a blessing because you're doing what Yahweh wants us to do, and you're marking time on his schedule. But then we talk about the kids. We came to this when our kids were very small. In fact, Diana was pregnant with Brent when we moved here to Missouri and we were studying. Brent, as you saw, was that large man that just walked out of the room with my grandson in tow, right? And so there's a time marker. And there are a couple pictures of the kids keeping Christmas because we did it after we knew better. Ah, that was rough. There was some repenting going on there because we read and we knew, but we still were being in those trappings and this and that. And my parents were so upset with me leaving the sacraments. And we did it once when we knew better and we had to repent from that. And, but my kids also um, learned very quickly. And another funny story is that there's homeschoolers all over the place. We live in the country in Missouri, right? It's almost like a package deal. And and the homeschool family down the road, staunch Catholics, and we had a conversation because we're friends with them today. Never stopped being friends, but she said, maybe your kids can just not come over in November and December. Because my kids were going over there telling them, hey, what is that thing? What are you doing that for? My kids were telling the truth. And they said, let's just take a break during the winter holidays. So we did, and we still remained friends. But my kids picked it up pretty quickly and they were talking about it and open with their kids, and they didn't want them exposed to it. Now, look at that situation from the opposite lens. We have the truth. I'm not afraid of sending my kids over there. Right? Right? Brent, when he was a boy at Bible camp, he corrected the pastor. No, it doesn't say that. He was looking, the guy's looking it up, right? And so the kids are great because we're supposed to come at this like kids. That means that it makes sense and it says what it says and you do what it does. But you think homeschool is going to solve the problem, but it doesn't. We're going to have a slide about education, but to understand that your sports activities. Brent went to a Taekwondo tournament that was Christmas themed. Taekwondo is Korean, right? Doesn't have anything to do with Christ. And so it's everywhere, and you have to teach the kids how to live in the world, but not be of the world. It starts very young, and they have friends, and the friends have differences, and you have to teach them that it's okay to have differences, and maybe you can influence them or they can influence you in other ways, and you can come together. But that's the struggle, because not only like we have Bibles and reference material, piles and piles of it that were compiled by people who don't believe like us, but we still read it. Right? Our kids have to be taught math, English, music by people who don't believe like us. So we can't isolate ourselves from the world. We have to be part of this world. We have to influence the world for good, and we have to teach the kids to be strong along the way. Marriage. Wives, be subject to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Messiah also is head of the church. He himself being the Savior of the body. But as the church is subject to Messiah, so also the wives ought to be to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, just as Messiah also loved the church and gave himself up for her, so that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, that he might present to himself the church in all her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she would be holy and blameless. So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his own wife loves himself, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but he nourishes and cherishes it, just as Messiah also does the church, because we are members of his body. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall be one flesh. I don't know why Paul talks like this. Why does he write like that? Is this an analogy or a metaphor? Is this Paul's opinion, or is it meant to be taken literally? Well, we're going to explore it just the same. Being married and having raised children in this faith does make one an authority on this. My wife was raised SDA and introduced me to the Sabbath after we were married. Now, what was my reaction? I'm the head of this house. We're not doing that. No, no, you would never treat yourself like you don't treat anybody like that. That's not the way. No, 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 no. She challenged me to learn something. She was raised SDA. I could have stomped my feet, but that's just awful behavior and certainly not what Paul is intending to convey here. You're not the boss because you have XX or XY, right? You married your spouse because you love her and you respect her, and she did the same. So she challenged me because she knew something I didn't know. I took the challenge. I was a little cocky and I thought, surely the switch to Sunday is in there. Good to see how that worked out. But then what happens is when people get to the other end of that study, I got to the other end of the study and I had to admit, you're right. And I respected her. And where do you think that went from there? Right? She's walking out the door, right? Because that sets a baseline. This is the baseline for the rest of the marriage. She knew something I didn't know. And I respected her first. So then when I leapfrogged her, when I learned the truth that Sabbath is right, the diet's right, dead people are dead, then we kept going, right? We kept going and we kept moving in order to get to more truth. So Yahweh brought her to me so that she could humble me, so that then I could then, in a humble fashion, take us further. This is not, I'm the head of the household. This is a loving marriage where the two people are completely united and moving in the same direction that God is leading them. That's what Paul is trying to tell you here. And marriage is not bliss. There's works along the way, finances. We did single income and she took care of the kids and I worked. Single income was foolishness, but we did it. We'll never retire, but our kids have a better shot at life. Kids have um, a better outlook because the husband and wife are united and they have that example to shoot for. In this day and age with instant gratification and constant stimuli, being married and building a family tends to be overlooked. It tends to be discarded. And that's a shame. Folks focus on vacations and houses and jobs and things that are short and medium term, but the satisfaction of being married with kids in the faith and now grandkids in the faith is so much more important and rewarding than the other things that it can't be expressed. So the way to get there is you commit to your spouse like you commit to Yeshua, and you both focus on that and you don't think about it. You don't think people talk about, I've got to work on my marriage and stuff like that. I never, what do I got to work on? I'm married. I'm done. It's over. I married her. She married me. Off we go. Right? There's no second guessing, no looking back. No, none of that. It's over. Right? And now, when then we move forward, we move out here. I never once thought about living in Missouri. I didn't even know where it was. I knew my way around the island of Bahrain more than the United States. I had no interest in moving to flyover country, but that's where Yahweh wanted me to be. So that's where I am. And but then we get to the unequally yoked part. But to the rest I say, not to the Lord, that if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever and she consents to live with him, he must not divorce her. And a woman who has an unbelieving husband and he consents to live with her, she must not divorce her husband. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified through his wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified through her believing husband. For otherwise your children are unclean, but now they are holy. Yet if the unbelieving one leaves, let him leave. The brother or the sister is not enslaved in such cases, but God has called us to peace. So how do you know, O wife, whether you will save your husband, or how do you know, O husband, whether you will save your wife? Most people don't have it like me and my wife. There's other people in the room who do. And if you don't, there are people in this room who have unequally yoked relationships, and you should probably talk to them. I know when to shut up. I have no idea how to do that. I have no idea the friction we have in the world, and you're living this faith, and you de-leaven your house, and then your spouse comes and brings home a cupcake in the middle of unleavened bread because they're oblivious to what you do. I'm sorry about that, and I don't know how you guys do it, but you still got to be in it. And yeah, we have several in our fellowship that are unequally yoked. In fact, for some reason, at some point, it was like a club, right? Right? And to different degrees, how they will deal with their spouses. Some of the spouses are okay and they're ambivalent, and some are have outward antipathy towards the way we fellowship. And I just have nothing but empathy for you, because it could have been me. It 100% could have been me, because my wife was raised right and I was not, and I could have been that guy who said, "Nope, one true church. We're going to follow the sacraments and we're going to do it my way." I could have been that guy, and it's only by the grace of God that He softened my heart, because I'm a stubborn person and obstinate and hard to convince of things, and the fact that that was an absolute miracle at that moment, and is very, very important to stay in the faith. And if you have it like that, you know, hopefully you all can get together and help each other out. Because the grief of this world should not come home. You know, education. I would love to talk about this for hours, because it's there's no good answer. Okay. Let's start with the positive. If suddenly I became very wealthy, I would start a school for people with kids like us. That's that's what I would do. And I would get teachers like us and get them to all come together, and we would have that school. And of course, nobody would attend because we're on the wrong calendar, right? But but um, but there's no good answer here. It would be a huge blessing if there was a private school that kept Shabbat and the holy days, the diet, and then taught kids the classics and taught kids how to think and reason and have critical thinking. That would be awesome. That doesn't exist. So we have to do it ourselves. And that's a problem. Some people have to use the public school system because of the cost of living in this world is astronomical today. You know, we go to the store and we used to buy this bag of salmon. It was $16. Overnight, it went to 32 and it's never been back. I mean, the cost of everything is so high right now that you may have to use the government school system. But for goodness sakes, you better look at what those kids are learning. You better watch it, and you better deprogram them as they move along. It's not all bad, right? They're really good. They do good at math. They do good at history and sciences and stuff like that. But when we left California, they were putting up these safe spaces and they were doing all this LGBTQAIEIO stuff. And, and they were forbidding parents from homeschooling if you weren't accredited teachers. And it was draconian. And we came out here and we started our kids in a private Christian school because we know our limitations, and woman can't have three little kids at once and be expected to teach them. That's just unreasonable, right? It's unreasonable. And so we got into a private Christian school, and I lined out the doctrinal statements. So, nope, we don't do that. We don't do that. We're okay with that, right? They still took us, and they still went out of our way to accommodate us. And it was a blessing upon blessings. And when the first time gas went up to $4 a gallon, we had to stop because it was 20 miles one way. And they said, "We'll make your tuition free." This was a Sunday Christian school that wanted us to stay that bad. So there's a lot of good people out there. But we got our kids to go for the first couple years in Christian school, and so that they could get taught to read and write. And then it switched to homeschool. And then um, and then we started using the community college. And the community college is a huge asset. And this is news that if you guys are thinking about this, that you should pay attention to, because we graduated Vani from high school at 17. And there's transcripts. I got a program where I made transcripts, right? Because you gotta have transcripts. So she has transcripts. And then Alex, my youngest, who's not here today, she's at Mizzou doing summer school. She saw what Vonnie was doing, and she was 15 years old. And she says, I could do that. Went up to her room, got on her computer, and registered herself for community college at 15 years old. And she graduated, she did dual enrollment. So her high school graduation was a general education associate's degree from community college. And now starting her second year at Mizzou now. So you use these assets. You don't have to do it the way that the government schools do it. You can use the government school and homeschool. There's a K-12 program that will give you the curriculum and give you the guidelines. There's Alpha and Omega. There's so many assets out there. But the blessing is that you can tailor the education to the individual. My son has absolutely no desire to go to any type of class. But if you call it business training, he's on it, right? Like first time I gave him a bicycle, he went over, grabbed a wrench, started taking it apart before he rode it. Okay. Okay. So obviously this man's going to be a technician of some sort. Let him be that. There's no reason for that man to go to calculus, right? The girls, geniuses, they're all kinds of academic and they're all kinds of bookwormy and they love reading and they love writing and language and music. Go for it. Let the kids be who they are and you get a better outcome. And that's just common sense, but it's such a blessing. There is if you don't know about the government school system, watch the documentary by Ben Stein called Expelled, which is misspelled. X, just the letter X. Because I didn't know this until I watched that documentary in my 30s, maybe 40s. There's a test we all take in junior high school that gives you these stanines. That test just determined your entire future. Because if you score high, you get put in a track for high school and middle school for being a professional. If you don't score high, you get put on a track of being a laborer. And I, for the life of me, had no idea why I never went to class with the people I lived by. Growing up poor in a trailer in Las Vegas, I would always be in class with a bunch of upper middle class kids that I only saw in class because they lived in very nice neighborhoods that didn't have trailers. And so Expelled explained that if you scored high, you went on this professional track. And I'm like the only person walking around that understands the electoral college because I was in this really advanced government class in high school. Nobody ever told me. Nobody told me, hey, buddy, you're supposed to go to college, right? So I also started life as a technician and now I'm a professional. But that test is a kind of a death sentence because what if somebody's a late bloomer? What if next year the hormones click and they open their eyes, right? It just doesn't fit. So the homeschooling or just alternative education using private schools, use the assets that you have so that kids can have a better outcome. And it is not that lonely. It is for us because we moved to where nobody lives. Okay. Our neighborhood had, if all the houses were built, would have 75 houses with an acre and a half each. So there just aren't people. So our kids didn't have a lot of friends, but they still had friends and they still went to taekwondo and they went to gymnastics and they went to music. And that's where you have to fill in the gaps is by hiring professionals to teach your kids the things that you don't know in order to get a balanced education. And so, and we didn't, to back this up, my wife and I did not keep our kids out of public school because of religion. Okay. We didn't like public school because we both grew up poor in totally different places, unbeknownst to each other, and were bullied every day of school. You look at me as big as I am, you're like, you were bullied? Yeah, I was, because I'm a teddy bear. I'm not a mean guy, right? And so she was bullied so much that she put herself through private school by washing the dishes of the rich kids after school. She couldn't take it. And I couldn't imagine sending my kids to that mess that I went through, where you get on the bus every day, somebody's picking on you, and you get no relief until you get home. And you go home, you shut your door, and you dread doing it the next day. That's why we didn't do it, because school kids are so mean, and the administrators have no ability, or at this point, they don't even have the knowledge of what a civilization ought to be. So we just didn't want to doom our kids to that. We wanted them to have a better upbringing. And so they probably have some resentment to us because they didn't get to go do the things that all the other kids did. But we made up for that in all of the activities and the tournaments, and letting them have that experience, to try to give them some of that. But I just couldn't see my kids going through that. Now they might have had a good time. It might, because we make more than my parents did. It could have been better for them, but I wasn't going to take that risk. So, um, life can be good. There's another thing that comes up in our walk, is that people want to retreat and want to withdraw from the world. And that is not a New Testament concept. In the New Testament, all of the believers were called right exactly where they were, to be lights and to be part of society. So Jeremiah 29, 4-7 says, "Thus says Yahweh of hosts, the God of Israel, to all the exiles whom I have sent into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon, build houses and live in them, and plant gardens and eat their fruit. Take wives and become the fathers of sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons, and give your daughters to husbands, that they might bear sons and daughters, and multiply there and do not decrease. Seek the peace of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to Yahweh on its behalf, for in its peace you will have peace." This is the first exile where they were sent literally to Babylon. We are coming to the truth in spiritual Babylon. We have nowhere to run. We're stuck. This whole world is a big fat mess. But this theme still exists. Build a house, enjoy life, have a wife, have a husband, have children, have gardens, have a career, be in the world, but don't be of the world. And Yahweh said at the end of every creation day that it was good. The work that he did was good. We are made in his image. Our work needs to be good too. We need to be able to enjoy our labors and enjoy our families and enjoy this fellowship that we have here today. So that's a big message I want to pass on too, is the temptation to run away and withdraw from the world is pretty strong. And depending on your circumstances, you may need to do it to some degree. If you're in a bad situation, you can't stay in a bad situation. But don't think it's a requirement to retreat from the world, because that was not the calling. The calling was to preach the gospel to the nations. You cannot do that from the woods. Okay. I guess with the internet you can. But anyway, 1 Peter 2, 11-17, "Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from fleshly lusts which wage war against the soul, by keeping your conduct excellent among the Gentiles, so that in the thing which they slander you as evildoers, they may, because of your good works, as they observe them, glorify God in the day of visitation. Be subject, for the sake of the Lord, to every human institution, whether to a king as the one in authority, or to governors as sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do good. For such is the will of God, that by doing good you may silence the ignorance of foolish men. Act as free people, but do not use your freedom as a covering for evil, but use it as slaves of God. Honor all people, love the brethren, fear God, honor the king." I can't really add to that. That is the close of today's message, and we will open it up for discussion, comments, corrections, and the like. Please use microphones. Or just say you agree with me and we can dance.
I agree. But I'm also adding to it. You were talking about how we live our life and how we should walk as the Messiah walked. And it just brought me as into we have to do this. It's a commitment, and it's a covenant to endure to the end. So
Yep.
once you make that commitment, that covenant, and you're in that covenant, you better finish. Because we're not once saved, always saved. It's a life commitment.
Yeah.
So
Amen. Yeah. Everett?
Yeah. My family started keeping the Sabbath when I was 12. But before then, we were in the Baptist church. And in Sunday school, we did a lot of scripture memorization. You know, I don't know why, but for some reason, I did like twice as much as anybody else. But I found it to be intensely valuable. Unfortunately, um, I didn't require my son or my daughter to do the same thing. That was a mistake.
Mm.
I really should, you know, in the Baptist church, we learned the Ten Commandments, the Beatitudes, John 14. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. All kinds of things like that. And it really connected me, I think, with the scriptures. And like I say, it was a mistake to not do that with my son. I just figured he grew up, you know, keeping the Sabbath. Guess I just figured it would rub off.
Yep.
But unfortunately, it hasn't. You know, one thing I had an acquaintance, a woman whose husband was not interested in the Sabbath. And what she ended up doing is making Friday evening a sort of a special meal for them. I don't know if they had children or not at the time, but she really, you know, put on the show, candlelight dinner and all this kind of stuff and all his favorite foods. And you know what? It turned him.
There you go. Best
He
way to a
decided
man's heart is through his tummy.
Idea wasn't such a bad thing after all.
That's it.
And you know, it seems like it was easy. It was probably harder than that sounds like, but at least it's one idea of you know how to move a mountain, if you will. You know, anyway, my comment.
Yeah, when I was reading the Bible, I was the longer version is she challenged me. It's not like it instantly happened. And I've always traveled for work, and I've skipped that part today for some reason, but it was long enough. So I've always been a road warrior, so that I would be driving around to see customers or to go to meetings and whatever. And I was at a truck stop in Fresno, and there was this Bible that said the Trucker's Bible. It had a fake picture of Jesus and an 18-wheeler on it, and I'm like, that is corny enough to read. Okay, that got me, and I read it, and it turns out it was just an NIV New Testament. I didn't know I didn't know any difference of Bibles back then, nothing like that. And as I was reading it, I'd ask her questions. She knew everything, like whatever it's talking about. I'd never seen the woman touch a Bible. She knew the whole thing, and I'm like, that is also impressive along the way. That adds a little bit of details, because obviously she was taught something I wasn't taught, and it was just amazing how much she knew just off the top of her head. I'd be in the living room reading, and I'm like, "What about this?" She's like, "Oh yeah, keep going. It'll make sense in a minute." And I'm, and I'm like, "Okay." So that's true. But we only made our kids go. They've been through Torah portion so many times at church, but they had to go through the New Testament line by line, you know, together one time, and we did that. But they get it, and I don't know. I was talking to Brent yesterday. This just came up, and boy, he blew my socks off. He was explaining stuff to me. I'm like, all right, this is great. But yeah, it's well taken there. Do a lot of Bible study with your kids. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. Well, now's where we usually bless the kids, but they are not here, so we can't. Go ahead, Mary.
You want
Yeah.
online?
Yeah. Yeah.
So seek the peace of the city where I have sent you into exile.
Yeah.
and pray to Yahweh on its behalf, for in its peace you will have peace.
Yep.
That should be my goal every day. To pray for because we're in exile, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, I was driving home from a convocation yesterday, and I mean, he gets you right when you don't expect it, in traffic, in construction, everybody's favorite. And I just started looking at people and thought, that's an interesting move. That's cool. That's interesting. And he overwhelmingly all day yesterday, all I can tell you is he says, and still I love them. And still I love them. And the point is that I have to do everything because I love him. There's no other reason to do anything. There's not a reason to read it. There's not a reason to do this.
Yeah.
It's really the reciprocation of a God who just waits and waits and waited for me. Very lovingly and very patiently. So I love that, because I don't even know if well, like you say, when did they put that in the Bible?
Yeah. Yeah. That was Jeremiah telling the exiles the purpose of this is if you go into exile, you think maybe I should be in sackcloth and ashes. Maybe I should be a rebel. Maybe I should try to overthrow, but they were put into exile for 70 years. And he says, you just be patient. I'm going to let you go. You're right. You're going to go. And that's the same message that we need to take, right? We are here in this fallen world. We don't like it. That means it's working. That means our studies are working, but he's got a plan, and this stuff is going to work itself out, or it's going to work out in a way that we don't expect. And but we got to trust him. So, yep.
Well,
Tiffany?
we're scattered for a reason. He's going to bring us back eventually together. And we came to the truth where we're at. So we have to embrace that and also preach that to others, so we can bring as many into the kingdom as we can. But I would love to have some acreage without anybody around me. That would be nice still.
I'm
But
not complaining.
just as my testimony, I have a spouse where I was a Christian, Sunday keeping Christian for my whole life. And my spouse, I came in this about 10 years ago, and he's still not in this. So cooking him dinner's not doing anything for me. But maybe it's my cooking. I don't know. But we're unequally yoked. So it is important for the children or people who are unmarried to marry someone who's in this, and to have equally yoked, because you can't necessarily convert them, whether you want to or not. And you think that you love them, but really it comes down to how much do they love Yahweh and follow their ways and their laws. And you have marriages hard enough being equally yoked, as well as even more hard being unequally yoked. So there's something to it when you both have one mind, one heart, one soul, and have the love of Yahweh. Because if you don't, it makes it 10 times harder to be in that relationship. I do think it has brought me closer to Yahweh in some aspects, because I am pulled to him to learn more truth, to get his love and his patience and guidance, and to endure in that circumstance. So there is some good in it that I can see, but ultimately it would have been nice to have a equal yoke partner in that. So
I can't imagine it. Yeah, the constant friction would just be irritating, right? Oh, go ahead, Amy.
I just want to give a word of encouragement to any of the women who are in a marriage that's unequally yoked. I lived it. My husband didn't fight me. I mean, we came later. Our kids were, I don't know, early teens and a little younger when I came to believe in Sabbath and keeping all the, learning it slowly, keeping the feasts and stuff. He never fought me on it. But he also lived a totally separate life, right? He was in the world and doing things of the world, and and so I battled constantly with what the world would say to do, which is leave him because it's going to destroy your kids. They're going to turn out terrible, yada, yada. And I went to the verse that you read today about staying, that he gave us a command to stay if our husband chose to stay. He never chose to leave. And I always stayed with him, but I battled constantly thinking, am I doing the right thing? Are my kids going to turn out terrible? Because, that's the world, what the world tells you, you know? And so years went by and he finally came to the faith. And it wasn't long before he passed away. So it can happen. And I'm not saying it's going to happen to everyone, but that verse kept me going and it kept me on the right path. And I believe that's what he wanted for me. And as for the kids as well, they went down the wrong path for a while, but all of my kids today, I have 3, keep the Sabbath.
Amen.
They are
Right.
teaching their
Yeah.
kids to keep the Sabbath.
That's great.
So just wanted to give a word of encouragement for anyone that is struggling because it is hard. It's extremely hard. And at times you get so discouraged because you feel like you may be doing the wrong thing, but just trust. Trust him and trust his word and what it commands you to do.
Yeah, more stuff that I forgot to say earlier, but I kept mentioning I was a business traveler. When we moved here, we live in the same house today, but there was nobody around us. And I was out Monday, home Friday every week. We totally did the nuclear family thing. Men go out and conquer, women run the household. And it is through women that this world is civilized because the women raise the kids and instill the values and they run the household. And that happened so like it had to happen. I realized probably a little too late that no matter what my opinion was, she was going to run the house however she wanted to run the house when I left on Monday morning, right? That's just the way it was going to be. And there's nothing I could do about it. So okay, I'm along for the ride, right? And then I would warn them when I was coming home, right? Because sometimes I come home real grouchy. Actually, almost every time I came home grouchy from being on the road, and the house would be a mess. If some appliance died or the kids got a tummy ache, and the house is just a complete disaster. And I had to realize, hey, she doesn't want the house to be a disaster. She didn't mean for this to happen. This happened. And I have to go, okay, let me help. Or if I have to come home grouchy, I tell them, hey guys, I'm in a bad mood. I come home, the house is spotless, and the dishes are done. And I'm still in a foul mood, but I got no reason to be, right? And and a couple times I used hotel points to give Diana a weekend. Just go take a bottle of wine, go to a hotel, and just go sit in a tub, right? I don't think I did it enough because I wasn't as compassionate as I should have been because I got to be out having business meals and out for the whole week. And it's stressful, right? Because you working on politics and not politics, office politics, and working with customers and being gone and getting delayed on flights and stuff like that. But and then you come home and the house is a disaster. And I just had to tell myself she doesn't want it to be this messy, right? And so sometimes it just stays that way because she's wiped out, I'm wiped out. Oh well, dirty dish never hurt anybody, right? And you just have to you have to realize that is the net result. So, but everybody's going to have their own house and their own dynamic. In some cases, the wife may be the breadwinner. And in that case, in this civilization, the world we live in today, it's messed up. But in that case, the dude better be wiping those butts and washing those dishes, right? Right? He better be scrubbing that house because you can't sit home and with with your feet on the recliner and expect her to do all the work when she gets off work if she's out there slaying dragons and making moolah, And that's a little upside down world, but it is what it is, and you gotta just approach everything with as much compassion as you possibly can, and women will go years without buying themselves a thing. They buy everything for their kids, do everything for their husband, do everything, serve. And you guys got to wake up and look and say, wait a minute, that gal hasn't done her nails in 5 years. Here's a gift card to take yourself to Ulta and go get it taken care of, right? That she hasn't, be aware that your wife is not a dude and, and that she needs to, do stuff that's nice every once in a while because she's thinking of you all day long because women are just full of empathy and we're not. So, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but you guys just approach it all with a lot of empathy and a lot of love, and just approach it as Yeshua did, because he ate with the sinners and he ate with the sick and he healed people, and that's our example. And sometimes the sick and the hurt and the weak are our own spouses or in our own houses. We have to be aware of that. So, but the kids are back. Room doesn't quite seem full enough, but I think it's time to bless the kids and close this thing out if nobody has any more to answer.